Hello and welcome back to Onioncreature Update. I'm Owen Carlson, and today's news story is that Pikmin 3 has been removed from the Wii U eShop. It's true. It's gone. Never to be seen again. And also, Pikmin 3 is getting a deluxe port for the Nintendo Switch to be released on October 30th. That's our holiday game, folks. We're getting Pikmin 3 Deluxe. So I definitely do have some conflicting opinions on this Pikmin 3 Deluxe version. On the one hand, I'm really glad that I'll be able to play Pikmin 3 on the Switch in 1080p, and that more people will have an opportunity to play the game, since the original Pikmin 3 was on the Wii U, which was pretty lackluster in terms of sales. So hopefully this Wii U port will allow it to reach a larger audience in some form. That would be ideal, because Pikmin 3 is a really great game. It's my personal favorite Pikmin game by a long shot. I think it's pretty fantastic, and the new content that they're adding seems to be reasonably substantial. Like, there's a new epilogue and prologue starring Olimar and Louie, which is pretty awesome. Some new story content there. It's not yet clear how expansive that is, but it's new content nonetheless. And then you also get all the paid DLC included on the cartridge. And then one or two other things, like I think you can play through the main game in co-op, which is awesome. That was something I wish we had in the original Pikmin 3. There is the unfortunate price situation that we have with these Nintendo Switch ports, where the original games on the Wii U were being sold for $20, but now that they're being, slightly updated, the updates can be somewhat substantial, but either way, they're increasing the price from $20 to $60 for what usually is, not $40 worth of extra content. They always charge premium for their games under almost all circumstances. So it's not surprising, but it is disappointing. And I think what's especially just sort of kind of scummy is the move to remove these games on the Wii U eShop where they were originally available. Like, I know Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze got deleted from the Wii U eShop, as did Mario Bros. U. And those games were also being sold for $20, I believe. So, yeah, it's just kind of a gross move for the 10 million Wii U owners out there. I guess Nintendo's like, oh, we want them to buy the new Switch version that's $60 as opposed to the Wii U version, which is $20. But so few people own a Wii U that it's I don't really see how that's even really worth it for them to even put in the effort of removing it. Speaking of me not loving things Nintendo is doing, I think that brings us to a wider conversation about Nintendo's 2020 release schedule. Because I think at this point we have a pretty clear idea at what we're getting, and it's not much in that it's, as far as we can tell, only Pikmin 3 Deluxe. So that is a little bit unfortunate. I think that most people were hoping for something a bit more substantial in terms of a holiday release, and there is technically still time for them to announce and release something, but the fact they announced Pikmin 3 now, and it's being released in late October, coming into November, is, in my opinion, a bit telling about what else we might see. I could see there being maybe one other game, and even then I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be something totally original. And I guess you can kind of blame the release schedule on the pandemic, which has seemingly affected Nintendo pretty drastically. Perhaps even more so than they're admitting, just based on their actions. I think this year has been pretty decent in some respects, but pretty lackluster in others, in that we've gotten some games that interest me a lot personally. I really love the Xenoblade remake, and I really love the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon remake. But apart from that, you had a few other ports, like the Shin Megami Tensei Fire Emblem crossover. Now this, the Pikmin 3 Deluxe port. Those are good. But other than that, the only proper new Nintendo games is Animal Crossing New Horizons, which has had a huge impact, and its significance should not be understated. Paper Mario: The Origami King, which I think is selling really well, and people seem to be enjoying it. So yeah, Paper Mario: The Origami King, reasonably major title. And then lastly is Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics, which is a collection of board games and card games and whatever, which seems alright. Other than that, it really has just been ports, remakes, and third-party stuff. So it hasn't been a terrible year, but it's definitely been lighter than would be ideal. There have been no major Nintendo Directs this year. The closest we've had was the Mini Direct in March, and even then that was pretty light. The only real major announcement from that was Clubhouse Games. And then just in general, Nintendo's really been off in terms of reading fan expectations, just making a lot of miscalculations in my opinion. I think this unfortunate little trend started with the Pokemon Presents videos. Firstly, we had, Pokemon Snap revealed along with like a cafe mix and some stuff about the DLC. So people were pretty happy with the Pokemon Presents. But then at the end, they announced, we're going to have another one next week, and you better stay tuned for that, because I have an exciting thing. And waited a whole week. You go to the video, like, I wonder what it's going to be. Is it going to be a new main title, or some weird spin-off thing, or some new interesting idea? It could have been anything, and I think what they went with was like the worst possible thing, which was a sort of what looks to be like a watered-down MOBA title, which is being developed and published in partnership with Tencent, which is a company heavily affiliated with the Chinese government. And also it's a mobile title, and it's just not really what people were looking for, and it got a lot of dislikes, and people were just, I don't think I really saw anyone be that positive about it. It just seemed like a miscalculation, and people have pointed out that it might have been that Tencent required they have a specific presentation to reveal this game. It's possible that's the case. If that isn't the case and they just independently made that decision, we'll just have it in a separate thing. Huge mistake in my opinion. But either way, that happened. People were not exactly happy. And then we go to this Nintendo Treehouse live thing where they were gonna show more Paper Mario gameplay, which is, this pretty standard, I guess. Then they also said, it's such a bizarre, this is one that was definitely the weirdest. They announced that their WayForward is going to be revealing a new title, and it's from an IP they haven't worked on before. And so people are like, it's going to be a Nintendo IP because it's a Nintendo presentation and we don't have any idea of any new games. And then Nintendo had to clarify, they're like, we mean third party. So they're like, okay, third party, I guess it could still be something interesting, like a video game IP. Maybe it's with Capcom, maybe it's with Konami, maybe it's with Bandai Namco or something. So there were a great number of things it could have been. And the day comes and it's Bakugan, and it looks not excellent. So people were also not really pleased about that. And then just a few weeks later, there were rumors swelling of a Nintendo Direct coming on July 20th specifically, and then the evening before the 20th, Nintendo just announced on Twitter that they're doing a Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase, which is going to focus on third parties. And at first I was like, that's not really what I wanted, but at least there could still be some interesting things here, like the new Bravely Default game, No More Heroes 3, Bayonetta 3, Doom Eternal maybe. So there were things that could have been there. And then I read, it's only going to be 10 minutes. So okay. So yeah, just the fact that it's 10 minutes and that it's only third party stuff was disappointing in and of itself. And then I watched the thing, and there were a few, there were, I think for me, 2 good announcements. The Cadence of Hyrule DLC, which looks good, and then there's the Shimigami Tensei games, they're remastering an old one, and then there was a trailer for the new one coming out next year. So that's cool for fans of those, but for everyone else, it got a lot of dislikes and stuff. Again, so I just think that Nintendo really has a disconnect with what their consumers want from them at the moment, which is, shockingly, Nintendo games. So yeah, Nintendo really just has had a bit of a communication problem. Specifically, they've been doing Twitter unveilings, where they just post a trailer on Twitter and YouTube and kind of just call it a day and just continue marketing it from there. So they revealed Origami King in this way by just uploading the trailer to YouTube. And now Pikmin 3 Deluxe, the next major title that they're releasing, is also being announced in the exact same way. I personally just find it somewhat disappointing just because I do enjoy the Nintendo Direct experience itself. I think that having a time to look forward to where you're going to see trailers for the new games is an exciting thing, and it's something Nintendo kind of pioneered, and other companies have been copying it. PlayStation has their State of Play thing, which I've heard is sort of their kind of variation of a Nintendo Direct. And no companies are really doing traditional press conferences right now because of the virus and they're effectively doing what is a Nintendo Direct format. So it is pretty disappointing to me personally to see them step away from that format, since I really do enjoy it and I think it is kind of important to me. So I really do hope that when Nintendo has a more regular release and development schedule, that they will return to the traditional Nintendo Direct format. I mean, I don't know what the situation and if they knew concrete release dates, but I think that they really should have just done a traditional Nintendo Direct in like June and announced in that Paper Mario, the Origami King, and Pikmin 3 Deluxe, and also just the third-party stuff that's coming, like Shin Megami Tensei, other third-party ports and stuff. And I think that would have been fine. Like, I think even if it was just a Nintendo Direct Mini, that would have been better in my opinion. I just prefer Nintendo Directs. I think that works a lot better. It's just something I prefer, and I don't think there's any real benefit to posting things just on their own. I think that while you do get hype around that specific announcement, I do think that the Nintendo Direct branding is really powerful, so it's really unfortunate to see Nintendo not take advantage of that. But of course, these are unprecedented times. I do hope that when there is more of a return to normalcy in Nintendo's development schedule, that we do see the return of traditional Nintendo Directs. There are presumably more games coming that we just haven't heard about. Games that will be released in 2021 and beyond. Pikmin 3 Deluxe and Paper Mario were leaked ahead of their announcement and release. And along with those games, there were a few others. There was 3D World Deluxe version for Switch, seems pretty likely, as well as a 3D Mario collection for the 35th anniversary, and lastly a 2D Metroid game. And obviously we don't technically know if any of those are real, but given that I think they were coming from the same sources, those games were likely in development at some point, and most of them presumably still are or are planned for release. So I think it's likely we see one of those at some point. I think Nintendo does need to improve its communication, and you can blame it on COVID, but I do think some of it is on Nintendo. And you know, they're a very large company, so I think that a bit more competence isn't too unreasonable to expect. You do have to kind of mentally compare it to what the other video game companies are doing. Like Xbox is launching their new console, new games, as is PlayStation, and they had big, like, hour-long presentations showing new games. But with Nintendo, we get like YouTube and Twitter announcements and weird mini partner showcase Nintendo Directs, as opposed to anything really big. So it's just not my favorite situation, and I do expect that it will get better eventually. This is not looking to be the best year in terms of Nintendo releases, which is fine, but I think they could have made it a lot better had they communicated more with their consumers. So that's those are my thoughts on this kind of broad situation. Still looking forward to Pikmin 3 Deluxe. I hope that we get at least one more holiday title, but I'm not really expecting it at this point. So that's all of today's video, and I'll be back in the future if and when Nintendo ever announces anything new. And so concludes this edition of Onioncreature Update.